Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of the Stellium Astrology podcast. I'm Stephanie James, your host. I'm the founder of StelliumAstrology.com and I'm also the former horoscope columnist for Elle magazine in the UK. And I also teach the occasional class for the London School of Astrology, and I had a really nice experience a little while ago. I got asked to go back to the London School of Astrology as a mystery guest, and they got to analyse my chart and guess what I was doing or guess what I was struggling with. And then I got to appear for the second part of the class and talk my chart to them. So I really enjoyed that because it felt like I was back at school learning again and talking to other astrologers. And I just love talking to astrologers about astrology, as you can probably guess. Otherwise I wouldn't have this podcast, because I have to talk my language. I have to talk this language. I don't know what else to say really, other than I am just taking a short break from my Patreon page, rethinking a few things, but the page is still very much there and there's all sorts of things on there. You can still sign up and get a discount for signing up for readings with me. You get priority booking when you want to come and have a reading, and there's all sorts of things. There's not just the current astrology, there's things on there like new moon wish list downloads and all sorts of things. So there's plenty for you to have a look at if you fancied signing up anyway. I will be back. I may rejig it a little bit, but it's all the thing about having a mutable ascendant like I do, and I also have a stellium of planets in a mutable sign. I have Jupiter, Uranus and Neptune in Sagittarius. Some people might argue that's not a stellium because it's two generational planets and a social planet. However, there's a cluster of 3 planets in one sign. It gives me an emphasis, just as much as I've got my Aquarius stellium as well. So it's not one that I would normally count as a stellium, but it does give me that added mutability, although I do tend to project a lot of my mutability. I am a mutable ascendant, so I am a constant work in progress, and as a result, everything I do is always adaptable. Now, I decided this week I'm going to talk to you guys about a message from Laci C, one of my lovely patrons. And Laci says, Hello, I'm just popping in to raise a possible podcast episode. Is there any merit to attracting specific signs? Like, let's say all you do is attract air Venuses or air moons. Would you say that means you lack something and you should try to focus on those qualities more? Or is it just pop astrology playing with my heart? If it has any merit, I feel like it may be a big episode. Right, so basically, yes, there is something to attracting what you lack. Now, off the top of my heart, I can't remember your chart, Laci, but I have some examples in my head. One of the examples is myself and my partner. So I actually, as a part of the conversation for the London School of Astrology classes that I did recently, I was in 2 classes, one with the first years and one with the third years. They talked about my chart and my lacks. So they looked at the fact that I actually do lack earth, even though I'm a Capricorn, and I also lack fire, even though I've got that stellium of planets in Sagittarius. They are not like, you wouldn't point them. I did an episode on chart weighting, by the way. I'll have to link it below. But how to kind of calculate emphasis in a chart. Interestingly, I looked at Johnny Depp as well at the time, so it might be fun to go back and have a listen to that one. But yeah, so I've got, like with the transpersonal planets, you usually give half a point per planet. So that's 1 point for Jupiter and for Uranus and Neptune, and then 1 point for Jupiter, because Jupiter is a social planet, so you give a bit more of an emphasis. Whereas the personal planets, you give 3 points. Well, for the luminaries like the sun, the moon and the ascendant, you give 3 points. For the personal planets, you'd give 2 points. So you kind of count up how many planets are in which sign and work out which sign you've got more of and which you've got less of. But like I said, that I'm really butchering the craft there. I've done a whole episode, and it's actually an enhanced podcast episode on YouTube, so you can go over to my YouTube channel and check that out, and I will link it below. And while you're there, please subscribe, please like my videos when you watch them, and comment. you know, make a comment if it's relevant to you, whether it's helped you, whether you know somebody who has a lot more of an emphasis and they seem to be your kind of the fitting piece of the jigsaw, you know. But yeah, so with myself, I lack a bit of earth and I lack a bit of fire. I've got loads of air and I've got a bit of water. So, you know, I've got a bit of a watery, airy, emotional but analytical kind of chart. Now, my partner, he has got Taurus rising, Jupiter rising in Taurus, and he's also a Sagittarius. So I have attracted, and he's also got a stellium in Capricorn, and he's also got a fiery moon as well. So he's got moon Mars in Aries, Sun in Sag, and then he's got, I think about what's he got? He's got Uranus, Saturn, Mercury, Neptune, and his midheaven in Capricorn. Don't normally count the midheaven, but it's still an important point. So yeah, he's got all of that, and then he's got Jupiter in Taurus as well. So he's got loads of earth, loads of fire, and he's got only a little bit of water. But I say a little bit. He's got his Venus and Pluto in water. And what does he have in air? I don't know if he's got anything in air, actually. I don't think he's got any air. So I'm the air. I'm the breath of fresh air. Breath of fresh air. Fresh of breath air. So anyway, I put my teeth in. So that's an interesting thing to look at. But yeah, if you keep attracting the same thing over and over again, it might be to do with the fact that you lack something, or it could be that you have a placement which is attracting something. So, for example, have you ever looked at your chart with somebody you know and put the charts together and noticed if you've got any planets sitting together or opposing each other or squaring each other? It's worth looking at that. And if you actually keep attracting people who have what are seemingly unrelated planetary placements, so say myself, actually, again, as an example, my sun's at 17, nearly 18 Capricorn, and my moon's at just almost exactly, it's 15:59 of Scorpio, so it's 16 degrees of Scorpio, and my descendant is 17 Sagittarius. And so the midpoint of my sun and moon, which is a very important point for relationships, is actually lands on my descendant, which adds extra added relationship flavour to the relationship area of the chart. If you can calculate the difference between your sun and your moon and find the midpoint, and it's usually, you can usually do it on like astro.com or on astrology software. There is a way to calculate the midpoints and have a little look and see. Then you might find that some people you're attracting are actually picking up on midpoints in your chart. I might have to do an episode on that, so mental note to myself to do maybe an episode on midpoints and calculating midpoints with astrology software. Now, the other thing is that when you're attracting people with, the example here is air Venuses or air moons. When you want to look at what you're lacking, it's the majority of the time we don't look at the sign that we lack, though it can be interesting to do that. It's more about the element that you're lacking and potentially also the mode. So it's worth taking a look at, which elements and which modes you are underrepresented. I've used this example before, but I know a young lady, who I admire greatly, and she has been in same-sex relationships, and so I'd say homosexual and heterosexual. I don't even know if that's the correct terminology anymore. Turns out she describes herself as demisexual, pansexual. I can't remember, there was an added bit to that. And I agreed with her. That I also feel that I'm a pan-demisexual, which is somebody who is attracted more to the mind and more to, you have to have an emotional connection with somebody before you can get into a relationship. That's the demi. And the pan is that you don't discriminate, like you can be attracted to anybody if the connection is there. So I kind of think that's kind of how she describes herself. Now, she was in a relationship with a young lady, and they'd been together for many years. Now, this girl that I'm talking about, she's got Sun in Pisces, she's got Moon in Taurus, and she's actually got Moon and Venus and Saturn really tight together in Taurus. And she has, I believe, Capricorn rising. So she's got quite an earthy chart and a watery sun. She's got a fair few planets in water signs. Now, she lacked air in her chart. Cardinality, actually. She lacked cardinality and she lacked air, is what I can recall. Now, her partner at the time was a Libra, which is a cardinal air sign, the only cardinal air sign. Her partner, I can't remember everything, so she's a Libra sun, she had an Aquarius moon, and I don't remember her ascendant now off the top of my head. I think it was possibly, oh gosh, now I'm testing myself. I don't remember if it was a Capricorn ascendant. I don't know now. I'm not going to fill in the blanks. However, it's interesting that when I calculated her lack, she, I think she was lacking in water. So she'd attracted a Pisces with a lot of earth, and my friend had attracted a Libra, who, a cardinal air, so lots of air, where she was lacking air anyway. So it's very interesting that you do attract what you lack. I guess the lack is the way to think of where planets are placed, and you can think about this when you look at your chart and you think, oh, I've got houses that have got nothing in. What does that mean? I've got nothing in that area of life. Of course, we experience everything in life. We experience the whole chart. It's just that the places where the planets are sitting in the chart, and especially if you've got things like a stellium, for example, but it doesn't have to be a stellium, it can be anything, random planets dotted about. Though the places where the planets are, think of that as a much heavier area of the chart. Think of it like putting heavy items onto a bed, for example, and then pouring loads of ball bearings onto the bed. The ball bearings are going to rush to the areas that are weighted down more. They're not going to run to the areas that haven't been weighted down, because the gravity is going to do its work. Now, I'm not saying that gravity's got anything to do with it, but what I'm trying to say is that we tend to experience, perhaps think of it in a sense of like how energy can reach something more quickly. Think about the fact that the planets are in those areas which they are pulling that energetic expression, that planetary energetic expression, through that house, through that planet. And if you've got a stellium, you may understand the intensity of having perhaps a pile of stuff on one part of the bed and then pouring all the ball bearings and just watching everything just congregate towards that pile of stuff you've got on the bed. That is a description of quite how intense a stellium can be. So when you think about the other areas of the chart that lack planetary representation, it doesn't mean you're not going to have any experience in those areas. Like say you didn't have anything in your 11th house, it doesn't mean you're going to be a loner. It doesn't mean that you're not going to leave some kind of legacy. It doesn't mean that you're not going to work in some kind of collaborative way with somebody, or do any kind of team working, or have any visions for how you can leave the world in a better place. I'm not saying that you don't have the ability to do that. It's just that maybe it might take you a bit longer to do that and achieve those things in life. It may be that you don't prioritise that stuff. That stuff doesn't get the most attention initially. So in a relationship sense, you can attract that person who fulfills those areas for you. So you could attract somebody, say you do lack an 11th house representation planetary wise, and perhaps you don't have much Aquarius stuff going on in your chart, perhaps you lack fixed air, then maybe you're going to attract somebody who is Aquarius, or maybe they've got Uranus rising, or maybe they are an Aquarius with Uranus rising, or maybe they don't have Sun in Aquarius, but maybe they've got loads of 11th house planets and Sun conjunct Uranus, or Moon conjunct Uranus. There's this kind of lovely way that the universe gives us what we need. And I do think of that song by the Rolling Stones, you don't always get what you want, but if you try sometimes, you just might find you get what you need. And that is exactly it. I do always try to think of every relationship I've ever been in, including the really horrible ones, including the people I really am not keen on, try to think of these things in a positive light, in a sense that at that time in my life, what I was going through, I needed to learn certain lessons. And the reason I needed to learn them was because I needed to grow in a certain direction. So I had to go through stuff to force me to go in a certain way. And you still have choice. I could have decided to settle down and have a baby with one of the worst relationships in my life, and maybe I would have had some unresolved personal baggage that I had to go through. Or perhaps I recognised the warning signs and I got out because it was my, I had already done the work in other ways, and I was ready for another lesson, So I try not to think of things negatively. I like to think that the universe is giving us what we need in order to grow. We just need to recognise. We have to be aware to recognise what is good for us and what is not. And if we aren't able to recognise what's not good for us, if we aren't able to empower ourselves, then I hope that we are able to, work in some way to... myself personally, life is a journey of self-improvement, and I'm a constant work in progress, like I said at the beginning. I hope that most people that are listening to this podcast are in a position to understand that astrology can be a tool for self-empowerment, and that once you recognise the things that you don't particularly like about yourself, or you understand that these areas need work, that you can then look at your life and see how you can apply this in real time. I know that not all relationships are wonderful, and sometimes we do a lot of learning through relationships. As I've quoted many times recently, relationships are the vehicle of change. Without relationships in our life, we wouldn't be pushed in certain directions, we wouldn't take certain steps, we wouldn't meet certain people, we wouldn't create certain people. And sometimes you are in a situation with a person and you just can't make sense of it. You don't understand why you're with them, what's happened, what's going on, and then something comes along that shows you, it gives you a good understanding of why these things happened. And as somebody who likes to see the bigger picture, somebody who likes to understand things from a bird's eye view or a little bit of perspective, I do think that the older you get and the more you kind of live and you look back through the lens of astrology, the more life makes sense. I think astrology is the only place in life where you can actually look backwards and understand things more, like you really can. You can anyway. If you're like somebody who's quite reflective, you can look at yourself, you can look at your life, and you can think to yourself, I feel like I came here for a reason. I feel like all these things happen because this is part of my journey and what I'm supposed to do and what I'm supposed to be right now. And yes, that is potentially, you can do that without astrology, but with astrology you can actually look at what was going on, how it was unfolding, and make sense of the future out of the past. I did another great class for the LSA, a transit diary class. I had a few compliments on that. Potentially, I think I might have to record one as for the listeners, for you guys to check out at some point. But the transit diary class is a popular one because it really helps you to make sense of yourself. And the key in a relationship to being happy really is to make sense of yourself, to make friends with yourself, to resolve your own personal stuff before you go into a relationship and experience the same thing over and over again and constantly project onto other people. I'm not perfect, I still do it, everybody does it, but we have to recognise, at some point we have to put our hands up and go, why does this keep happening? I did have a friend, and he used to come round to me. He was always getting into very quick, intense relationship with girls. I can't remember his chart now, but he had a very, very complicated T-square, which involved women and all sorts of complicated situations. And he did finally one day come to me and say, is it me? Because, I keep getting in all these relationships and they keep saying the same thing to me. And I was like, you know what? Yes, it is you. And I wasn't very popular for saying that, but he's married with children now. I think he's still repeating some cycles, but I think that we're all guilty of repeating cycles. It's good to be a cycle breaker, but I think there are so many cycles within cycles when you're living an astrologically aware life, that you might recognise some cycles, but other cycles you can break. I don't feel like we're here just doing one cycle. I think there's just a million. It's like we are part of the clock, and we have millions of little cogs whirring inside of us with millions of little cycles of past actions and people. And I don't think it's as black and white as coming in and just finishing one one mission and then that's it, you start fresh. I think that's why we some of us have a sense of past life, some of us have a sense of having done this all before and we've still got more to learn and that kind of thing, because I think that there are just so many different cycles, so many different areas of experience, and it's impossible to be on top of it all and to be like holier than thou and living the life of a saint in order to progress to the next level. I do think of life as a bit of a game sometimes, a bit of a learning computer game type thing. So that's kind of some thoughts there. But yes, we attract what we lack a lot of the time. And I think that if you've had a few serious relationships, even friendships, have a look at your friends' charts, have a look at your family charts. I think usually in families with that kind of thing, we recognise patterns of similarity. So I think that there's a lot of Capricorn, Scorpio going on. I think on my dad's side I've got a lot of Capricorn, on my mum's side I've got a lot of Scorpio, which, is it any surprise that I'm a Capricorn with a Scorpio moon? I know my dad's mum had a Capricorn moon, and they had quite a tough life. On my mum's side, my grandmother's a Scorpio with an Aquarius moon. My mum's a Sun Pluto. She's a double Cancer, actually. She's got moon rising in Cancer, a stellium in Cancer, actually, first house stellium. And so there's a lot of water and Pluto stuff in my mum's chart, and then myself, I have the Scorpio moon, a Saturn Pluto conjunction, an 8th house sun. So you see these kind of echoes in family charts, whereas with relationships, yes, you find almost like compatibility, elements of compatibility, but also they may be the blind spots to your own personal understanding, or they may help you to reach certain levels of awareness in yourself through highlighting the areas in which you lack. I really hope that answered your question, Laci. I know I went on a bit of a tangent, I waffled, but I just wanted to discuss that with you and with everybody else, just because it's an interesting question and it is a thing. It is a thing. If anyone else has got any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. I tend to not do a hell of a lot of prep, but I do sort of go into my little channel zone when I do answer these questions, which is quite nice. Anyway, guys, I thought I would just jump on today to record that for you. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel at Stellium Astrology, and subscribe, watch a couple of videos if you like, hit the bell, and I will link some videos below anyway that are related to today's episode. And also you'll be going into a draw for a Magic of Eye diary at the end of the year if you do subscribe. I would ask though, if you do subscribe, to screenshot the page that shows that you've subscribed and email me, stephanie@stelliumastrology.com, so that I have received, definitely, because some people's YouTube channels are private. And on that note, I will leave it there. Join up to the mailing list. I've got a little link below that's kind of one link to rule them all. I've created my own link page on my website now, so go in, explore the link page, and I'll speak to you guys soon. Take care. Bye now.